Hey, how's it going? I'm going to try to give you a really quick rundown on a way to do a stage setup. There's 100 different ways to do it. This is just kind of a quick and rough, dirty way to do it. So if you go to your advanced output, you have your screen. Since you're streaming or recording, just keep this set to virtual output, and you're going to completely ignore the output section. This really isn't needed for what you're doing. So kind of looking at your pictures, you have like a left side or right side, a DJ booth LED table thing, and then like a wall behind it. So I just created these. So you have back wall, DJ, right, left. We'll get into the diagonal here in a second, but basically I took an entire capture source with a diagonal mask on it. We'll get into that in a second. Okay, so first things first is how you structure things. Again, you can do this 100 different ways. The way I'm doing it for this example is each layer is mapped to a specific part of your scene. So if you come over here to slices, and if that's not there, you can go to view, browser panel, and then show slices. So everything you create in advanced output right here magically appears right here. So that makes your life real easy. So left right here, if we go to layer, I just dragged left right to that layer left. And if you look down here, we have a slice transform with the slices left. There's a couple different ways the scaling can affect this, and we'll get into that in a second. But what I did is went left, I put right on right. You kind of get the idea, one for one. So I have, the way I wanted the DJ booth to be structured is, I don't have a camera of me on here, so I just got this video clip of Napoleon dancing. So that's going to be mimicking your camera that you would probably chroma key out and all that. I want the DJ booth to be in front of the camera. That way your legs and stuff aren't showing. It's being covered up by the DJ booth. On top of that, we have some overlays that we can get into later on. A logo, which is going to be mapped to the DJ booth. And since I don't have a DJ booth, I just captured a screen and hey, there's a DJ booth. So excuse me. This won't be in your setup because that's actually going to be included with your camera. But since I don't have one, I had to make one. So if we turn the camera on, which for you it would just be clicking camera. For me, it's clicking the DJ booth element and the camera. This will kind of be what you would see. You would have your DJ booth, and if there was someone standing behind it, you would see that. And I used a crop on this, but if we take the bottom all the way down, you would see the person's feet, which is what we don't want. And we can just leave that on, it doesn't really matter. As soon as you turn on your DJ slice, so remember we went to advanced output, we created a DJ slice for the DJ booth. Then we went to slices and we drug the DJ slice onto the DJ layer. So if we turn that on, we no longer see the person's feet because the DJ layer is above your camera. Notice the back wall is not above the camera, so if we turn the back wall on, the back wall is behind your camera. If that was put in front of your camera, just like the DJ booth here, you no longer see yourself. So how you structure things is important. Let's turn on all these other things, and you can see we have a color, and then since we have left mapped to left, it's only showing up here on the left. So that's what slice transform does in a nutshell, is it maps clips, layers, or whatever you want to slices. So you can fit, fill, stretch. Let's get into that real quick. So one more thing to notice, if you right click on things, so camera, I right clicked, I hit ignore column trigger, because I'm going to be triggering a bunch of these clips at the same time, and I don't want that to affect my camera and some other layers. Otherwise I'd have to have a duplicate camera for each column, and that's kind of just eating up resources. So camera, right click, ignore column trigger. I did the same thing for overlays I did the same thing for logos and for this DJ element. So these things will not be triggered when I click on the columns. I'm a big fan of column triggering. So let's get into Slice Transform and how the scaling modes can affect things. So if I click column 1, it's going to load all these clips up. And if I hit preview on one of these clips, you can kind of see what the clip is. It's just this thing right here. So right now I have it set to mask mode, and what that does is it basically plays your clip over the entire raster, and it respects the spacing that you left right here, like this dead space between your slices, and it's basically just creating a mask, so it's only playing this section of the clip, but you're still playing the full clip in its full entirety. You're not stretching it or scaling or anything like that. You're just using this layer as a mask, and that's why you get these really cool lines set in there. So I went to shortcuts, and you can MIDI map just however you want. I don't have a controller in front of me, so I just keyboard mapped it. So when I hit the button 1, it's going to change from fill, and if I hit button 2, it's going to change it to mask. And I did this on every one of these, so you have to go into every one of your layers and then do your mapping. And I map it to this layer. That way, anytime I hit that button, that specific layer, the mapping is going to change. The two modes I use the most is either mask or fill. I'll show you what the other modes look like so you can see what you're getting out of it. So I have back wall selected. Doesn't really matter what's selected because my keyboard is going to affect both of these. So right now I have it on mask. If I press the button 1, it's going to change everything to fill, and you can see what that looks like. So right now we're taking this image right here, and we're coming down and we're shrinking it or scaling it to fill within each one of these slices. And what fill does is it respects the height and the width, and it zooms it to fit, but it's not going to stretch it to make the whole thing fit. So there's going to be areas that's going to be cropped off. Since we have back wall selected, if I set that to fit, actually let's do it on DJ, that's a better example. So if we go DJ, and so you can see right here, if we hit fit, we have all this cropped, because what fit does is it scales the height and width to fit within that slice. But you get cropping when you do that. If you hit stretch, things are going to look very skewed because it's not in the right aspect ratio. Selecting it to fill is going to make it respect the aspect ratio, and it's going to use either the height or the width to the maximum width or height to fill in there without cropping occurring. So some content looks good. Mask, some content looks better when it's like set to fill. For this specific content, I think having it set to mask looks better. If we jump over to this next content right here, there's a lot of stuff not happening on the sides, and I feel it's just kind of like space that's being wasted. So for this clip, I think setting it to fill would look a lot cooler, because now it's duplicated, and you're not having so much dead space with, without so much animation going on at one time. So you can see the difference between mask and fill. So fill looks, in my opinion, looks better for this clip. If we come back to this clip, I think mask looks better. So that's kind of the power of Slice Transform, is you can get some really creative looks per clip or per content. You can easily change between it by using button mapping. On top of that, we can use these slices on your clips as well. So I have this clip right here. It's just kind of this little skull with its head bouncing. And I thought that might be cool to look on the sides as an overlay. So I applied the left and the right to the clip. I didn't do it to the layer. So this layer is going to have like several elements, and each element is going to be set up to fit on a specific clip. And the way I have these set is I also right click on the clips trigger style, and I have that set to piano, and then I map that to a button as well. So at any point, if I hold down on that button, it shows up, and if I let off, it goes off. So if you're playing music and you want to kind of tap that to music, you can kind of get the idea. And you can put that on whatever screen you like, but that's a way to use the slice transform on a clip layer or clip level, and then using, you know, like a piano mode to kind of go into the beat. Let's dive into diagonal real quick. So you can get real creative and you can start doing all these different overlays, or however you want to think of it. You can create a bunch of slices for creative looks. So I got this diagonal thing going here, and I have it applied just to the clip. So what we got right here is, if I turn, it'd probably be better if I turn everything else off. So let me kill all of this stuff. And I'm going to turn slice transform off over here. Okay, so what this is doing is it's taking the clip, which is being played to the full size of your raster. So diagonal is sampling from this full screen right here of this clip. Then we made a mask right here, which is this diagonal line. So we got this diagonal line. So what we're doing is we're basically just sampling this diagonal line of the entire raster, and then everything else is not being sampled. So when we turn it back on, you can see we're just sampling that one line. And so we got this. For this example, we'd actually want your overlay to be behind the camera on this one, and above the, let's see here. We also want the, see, the issue we're having now is that it's not getting caught up on the DJ. So in order to get that, we'd have to put the camera above the DJ. And then you'd have to go in and you'd have to crop the bottom of your camera feed off, so it's not going on top of everything. And then we'd put our overlay on top of that. So at this point, that overlay is on top of all the screens and you're not seeing your feet. You just have to use crop a little bit to make this method work. But right now we have this cool looking little overlay going on right here. And you can do some neat stuff with it. You can add an effect called slide, and I'm just going to go to the Y value, and I'm going to just BPM sync that to the Y. If we turn that on, you can see we're now getting like a scrolling effect here. But to take it a step further, I'm going to go ahead and just collapse slice transform. If I drag slide and put it above slice transform, it's now sampling the content. The content is actually scrolling from top to bottom rather than that slice transform. And I haven't tried this. Let's see what happens if we put left and right on the channel overlay. Now we're getting that diagonal line, but it's only going on the left and right side. And if we come back in here and we put slide below slice transform, we're now getting these cool looking sliding lines. And if you really want it to be cool, you can hold down Control and then click and drag to copy an effect. You can drag it on top. So now you have scrolling content when it's stationary, but you're also having scrolling slices with the scrolling content. And then with this turned on, you can get that. So you can get creative with your slices here, doing different looks. If we did another one, let's do a new slice, and we'll call this rotation. And then we're going to do a mask on this one as well. So we'll come over here. We're going to draw a mask in. So let's go. Well, that'd be the same thing. So let's do a different one. Let's go do like a octagon or something like that. This isn't pretty by any means, but you kind of get the idea. Okay, so we have that now. And we might want another overlay layer. So let's insert a layer above. We'll call this overlay 2. Click and drag to copy. I want to turn off all of these effects. So now we have this clip. Now we're going to add rotation to this clip. And you can see we got this cool little thing mixed back here. But the next thing we can do is we can actually change rotation. So do we want to rotate it that scale, or like that? So we can animate that to BPM to where it's rotating there. Slow it down a bit. Or we can, again, just how you structure things, you can put transform under slice transform, and now that whole thing is rotating as well. And obviously if this was centered better and it wasn't so oblong, it would be rotating up there. But you kind of get the idea. Just by going in and creating slices and using them for, you know, like creative looks, you can, as soon as you update it here, it'll update here as well. Turning these things off, another fun thing about slice transform, let's turn these colors on. If you already have slice transform applied to your layers and you want to make changes and see how it looks, let's show this table and Napoleon back on. What's fun is everything's in real time, so we can come here, we can go to the DJ table, and as we lower that down, you can see it's actually mapping it in real time. So that's kind of cool. Let's hit cancel on that. And then the last thing to note is if we go to output and we turn on texture sharing spout right here, notice when we went to advanced output, screen 1 still set to virtual output. And if you look at your output, everything's just going to look really weird because we didn't map the output section. We're not actually using that. What we're wanting to do is we're wanting to output the composition via spout. So your output transform inside advanced doesn't really matter because we're not using it. Let me see if I can bring OBS up here. All right. Yeah, that looks fun. Okay. So inside of OBS, down here we have Spout to Capture. That's a plugin you can download. It's just Spout to Capture. And when you load that up, it'll have a list, and it should say Arena Composition because you're outputting Arena Composition right here. And as soon as I turn that source on, you're actually getting the full composition being outputted here. I'm actually going to scale this down a bit so you can kind of see I'm working around. So this down here is what we're sending here, and if we change to like column 1, you can see this right here is now being outputted as a source to OBS using Spout. And then you just bring that back up. I'm going to turn off just by clicking that eyeball, turning it on and off. But yeah, that's a nutshell how to kind of do like a virtual stage setup using slices and whatnot. One last thing I did forget to do is I made this text animator right here. Let's just throw on like a solid color. Come here and make this like maybe a gray. What I did is I just went to sources, added a text animator, typed that in. There's a preset I was using. I think it was called type on off is what it was. And then if you span down under where it says animate, if you turn that on, I basically just went to the opacity and BPM sync the opacity, and that's what gives you this kind of cool looking on-off animation. And then for the color, I went to HSB, and then I did the same thing with the hue. I went to hue and did BPM animation on that, so it's cycling through the hue. So that's kind of how I got this look, but hopefully this will kind of get you started off the ground on how to use Slice Transform and get yourself up and running. I'm also going to post a link to a really in-depth tutorial on Slice Transform by Yoris on YouTube. If you got an hour to sit through, I highly recommend it. That is a great tutorial. So let me know if you have anything else. Thanks.